1980. Audi lines up at the start of the World Rally Championship with a system that shocks every rear-wheel drive car around it, the QUATTRO system. All-wheel drive stops being a strange experiment and, in just one season, turns into a weapon that reshapes the entire sport and forces competitors to rewrite their rules. 1994. Audi returns to the real premium segment. The new generations of the A4 and A6 show that these are no longer just neat German cars for engineers. This is a brand that can confidently compete with BMW and Mercedes through technology, thoughtful engineering, and quiet confidence. 2006. Audi enters Le Mans and starts dominating the race like no one ever had before. Diesel power, efficiency, engineering, and absolute control. Once again, Audi refuses to play by the usual script and instead rewrites the rules for everyone else. For a certain period, Audi was a company that didn't try to be the loudest or the most emotional. It was the company that simply did things smarter and better. Vorsprung durch Technik wasn't just a slogan back then. It was an honest description of how this brand thought and worked. But today, everything feels a little different. At some point, Audi took a wrong turn. If before they were shouting louder than anyone else in the crowd, today you can barely notice them in it. Or maybe you do notice them, but you probably won't pay much attention. If a conversation starts about BMW, people immediately think of driving feel, emotion, and design. If someone mentions Mercedes, it's technology and comfort right away. But if Audi comes up, most people just say, yeah, it used to be better. And that's it. The conversation ends there. And personally, that makes me wonder, why is the brand that once led everyone now barely talked about at all? Where exactly did Audi take the wrong turn? Today you'll find out how Audi went from a technology leader to just another premium brand, why Quattro was the last truly groundbreaking technology the company created, at what moment the brand lost its clear identity, how competitors took its ideas and made them more visible, and whether Audi still has a real chance to take a risk and regain its former glory. You're on the Jesco channel, and here we talk only about cars. Let's go. I think it makes sense to start with how the Audi brand actually appeared and where both its name and its character originally came from. In the early 1930s, the German auto industry was going through hard times. Economic crisis, falling sales, factories shutting down. To survive, in 1932, 4 companies merged into one group called Auto Union. These were Audi, DKW, Horch, and Wanderer. That's where the 4 rings in the logo come from, each one representing one of those brands. Each of these companies had a different role. Horch was responsible for more expensive luxury cars. DKW built simple mass-market vehicles. Wanderer occupied the middle segment, and Audi was originally seen as an engineering brand, cars for people who valued technical solutions and smart design, not status or show-off. The name Audi also didn't appear by accident. The company's founder was named August Horch. When he left his first company, Horch, he was no longer allowed to use his own last name as a brand, so they decided to translate the word Horch from German into Latin. Horch means listen. In Latin, that becomes Audi. And that's how the name we know today was born. After World War II, Auto Union basically stopped existing in its original form. Factories were destroyed, production was halted, and the market changed completely. In post-war Germany, the company tried to recover, but without serious support, it was almost impossible. Eventually, control over Auto Union gradually passed to Volkswagen. For VW, this was a way to gain an engineering base and move into a higher segment. By the late 1950s and early 60s, Volkswagen began rethinking the future of Auto Union. The old brands were slowly phased out, and the name Audi was the one they chose to keep and develop. Not as a separate luxury brand, and not as a copy of the competition, but as a company focused on technology, engineering, and a rational approach to the automobile. From that moment on, Audi stopped being just a part of Auto Union's history and started forming as a standalone brand within the Volkswagen Group. In the 60s and 70s, Audi slowly began to build its own path. At a time when most German brands were competing with each other in status, power, and visual impact, Audi focused on something else. Not on design and not on prestige, but on how the car was engineered and how it behaved on the road. One of the key decisions was front-wheel drive, and it's important to understand this in the context of the time. In the mid and premium segments, rear-wheel drive was considered the only correct solution. It was associated with balance, performance, and real cars. Audi consciously went against that idea. Front-wheel drive was not chosen to save money, but out of logic. Better stability, more predictable behavior, especially on bad roads and in difficult weather conditions. Audi cars drove differently and solved different problems. Because of this, the brand gradually developed a very specific reputation. Audi started to be seen as strange cars, not the most beautiful, not the most prestigious, not the sportiest on paper, but smart. These cars often lost in raw numbers, but won in real life. They were more comfortable, more stable, and easier to live with. People chose them not for image, but for how they felt every day. At the same time, Audi began using motorsport not as a showcase, but as a tool. It wasn't about spectacle or pretty victories for advertising. Racing was treated as a testing ground, a place where ideas could be proven before going into production cars. Engineers looked at motorsport as a laboratory, not a stage. It was during this period that an important realization started forming inside the company. Technology could be more than just a feature. It could become the foundation of the entire brand identity. Not an extra option, not a marketing slogan, but the base on which everything else would be built. Audi was not loud yet. It was rarely placed in the same category as the market leaders. But inside the company, they already understood they had something others didn't. Their own technical path, their own logic, and a foundation that could turn into something truly big. And it was from this mindset, from these decisions and this engineering philosophy, that the idea was born which would pull Audi out of the shadows for good. In the late 70s, an idea appeared inside Audi that at first seemed strange even to the company itself: all-wheel drive. But not for an SUV and not for military vehicles, for a regular passenger car. At that time, all-wheel drive was associated with almost anything except fast road cars. It was either a utilitarian solution or an exotic curiosity. In motorsport and on the road, the logic was simple: rear-wheel drive for performance, front-wheel drive for economy. But once again, Audi chose to go against the current. The engineers noticed a simple fact: power was increasing, roads were still unpredictable, and grip was always limited. And if you sent power to all four wheels instead of just one axle, the car behaved differently. It accelerated more consistently. It felt more confident on wet asphalt, snow, or gravel. It forgave mistakes, but still remained fast. That's how the Quattro system was born. At first, this wasn't marketing, and it wasn't done for glossy brochures. It was a pure engineering solution. Audi wasn't trying to be flashy, it was trying to be effective. And there's a big difference between those two things. To prove the system worked not only on paper, Audi went into motorsport, not for show, not for status, but as a laboratory. And that's where the explosion happened. The Audi Quattro entered rally racing and did something no one had done before. On surfaces where rear-wheel drive cars struggled for traction, Quattro simply drove away. In rain, snow, and dirt, Audi had an advantage that was impossible to ignore. Victories came one after another, and with them came the most important thing: trust. And just as important, Quattro didn't stay in racing. Audi began bringing the technology into production cars, and because of that, people's perception of the brand started to change. Audi stopped being just a smart but strange brand. It became a company with a clear signature, something you could actually feel in real life. All-wheel drive stopped being an exotic feature and became a real argument. Quattro made Audi visible. And thanks to this system, in the public mind, Audi finally stood next to BMW and Mercedes, not as a follower, but as an equal player with its own weapon. From that point on, the question was no longer how Audi got there. The real question was what they would do with that advantage next. And the truth is, they used it to the absolute maximum. The early 2000s became the strongest period in the brand's entire history. Audi stopped being an alternative and became a full, confident choice. And not just any choice, but a very conscious one. The key role here was played by the core models. First of all, the A4 and A6. The A4 became the car that truly secured Audi's position in the business segment. It wasn't the most exciting, it wasn't the most prestigious, but it felt the most solid. Good handling, all-wheel drive, a high-quality interior, and the feeling that the car was engineered with real thought behind it. For many people, the A4 became their first real Audi. The A6 went even further. It was the car that finally removed Audi's complex of being the second choice. Spacious, technological, with strong engines, and that solid German character that used to be associated mostly with Mercedes. In the early 2000s, the A6 was seen as a serious, mature car without unnecessary show-off. And the important part is this: Audi wasn't trying to win with emotion, it was winning with a sense of thoughtfulness. You sat in an A4 or A6 and understood that everything was in the right place. Nothing extra, nothing random. It was premium without the show. Another big topic was interiors. In the 2000s, Audi set a standard that competitors struggled to reach for years. Material quality, panel fit, tactile feedback. Even BMW and Mercedes had to catch up. During this period, Audi interiors were genuinely considered the best in the class. At the same time, Quattro stopped being just a technology. It became part of the character of the cars. Audi wasn't chasing acceleration records, it was chasing confidence. These cars drove in a stable, predictable way, where others started to feel nervous. And for many buyers, that mattered more than any performance numbers. But it would be wrong to think that Audi in the 2000s was only rational and calm. This was also the period when the company actively developed the S and RS lineups. And here, Audi showed that it could be aggressive and fast when it wanted to. RS models were not built for image, they were built for results. All-wheel drive, powerful turbo engines, minimal compromises. These cars didn't need loud marketing, they simply performed. And the culmination of this philosophy became the Audi S8 with the V10. A full-size luxury sedan with all-wheel drive and a naturally aspirated V10 that had direct links to Lamborghini. From a logical standpoint, it made no sense. But from a philosophical standpoint, it showed exactly what Audi was about at that time. This was a moment when Audi could do everything. Be smart, be fast, and build cars not because the market demanded it, but because the engineers wanted to. Everything seemed perfect. Sales were strong, the cars were almost flawless, and competitors were under pressure. But the problem was that Audi's formula was too good. Balance, technology, all-wheel drive, quality, thoughtfulness. It all worked perfectly in the 2000s. But by the end of the decade, it became clear that the company had started repeating itself. This was especially visible in the core models. New generations of the Audi A4 and A6 were correct, high quality, and logical, but less and less memorable. They didn't become worse, they simply stopped surprising people. Every new generation felt like a careful evolution of the previous one, without sharp moves and without risk. At the same time, BMW started focusing on emotion and aggression. Mercedes moved towards status, technology, and visual impact. And Audi kept doing everything right, but too calmly. Even Quattro, which was once a revolution, started to feel like something completely normal. It was no longer the reason to buy an Audi, it was just another line in the spec sheet. What once defined the brand became background noise. Then another problem appeared. Audi started building cars that were hard to describe in one word. They were fast, but not the most exciting. Comfortable, but not the most luxurious. Technological, but without the feeling of a breakthrough. Cars without real weaknesses, but also without a strong character. And that's where the formula started to fail. Because the premium segment is not only about quality, it's also about emotion. And Audi's emotions slowly started to fade. Over time, Audi became more and more afraid of making mistakes. Design became precise and calculated down to the millimeter. Interiors were still high quality, but no longer surprising. Cars looked good, but too similar to each other. Sometimes it was hard to tell a new model from the old one without hints. The company seemed to choose a strategy of not annoying anyone, not shocking, not provoking, not taking risks. As a result, Audi stopped being a brand people argued about. People argue about BMW because of design and driving feel. They argue about Mercedes because of luxury and technology. They argue about Tesla because of the idea behind the brand. But Audi, people just say it's a good car, and that's where the conversation ends. Even the S and RS lineups eventually started to feel like standard equipment rather than something special. They were still fast and powerful, but no longer seen as a bold challenge to the market, just another part of the lineup. Electrification only made this problem more visible. Audi entered the electric world in a careful, well-planned way, but without a clear image. Tesla sells the idea of the future. Porsche sells emotion, even in electric cars. And Audi once again does everything correctly, but doesn't clearly explain why it matters. In the end, the brand reached a strange point. It didn't fail. It didn't collapse. It simply became too safe. Audi stopped being the first, and it never became the loudest. And that is why today it is mentioned less and less as a leader. Not because it is worse, but because in a world where attention is currency, being simply correct is no longer enough. And here comes the main question. Can Audi bring back its former greatness? The short answer is yes, but only if it returns to what once made it win: risk. Audi's problem today is not technology, not quality, and not money. The company is strong in all those areas. The real problem is that the brand has been playing it safe for too long, building correct cars, logical cars, thought-out cars. But the market no longer lives on logic alone. It lives on emotion and bold ideas. Audi has already been in a position where people underestimated it, and that was exactly when it struck back. Quattro was not a compromise, it was a challenge. Front-wheel drive was not a trend, it was a conscious decision. The design was not trying to please everyone, it simply did its own thing. If Audi wants to return to the center of attention, it needs to stop trying to please everyone. It needs to choose a direction and follow it, even if some people don't like it. It needs to make technology not just an option, but an idea people choose the brand for. A comeback is possible, but only under one condition. Audi must start asking questions to the market again, instead of carefully adapting to the answers. It has to become the company that builds not just another good car, but a car that forces everyone else to catch up. It has done this before, and I think it can do it again. The only question is whether it is ready to take that risk one more time. Thanks to everyone for watching this video. Leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and write in the comments what you think about this topic. Love cars and appreciate them. And I'm not saying goodbye because I'll see you in the next one.